Hello and welcome. My name is Matthias and I've been modding and repairing watches for over 7 years. And early on in my watch collecting journey, I had this beautiful vintage Seiko that I bought for just $20. And while it looked incredibly beautiful, it just wasn't running that well. And at that time, I definitely did not have enough money for a complete service, so I decided to do it myself. But unfortunately, right before finishing the reassembly, I broke some of the parts and it just never I just never completed the project. But and then 6 or 7 years later, I found this blue box, and it reminded me of how beautiful this dial is. Um, and I definitely saw the potential that this watch could have. Unfortunately, I was unable to find the old case back, and the old parts are pretty much deteriorating, as you can see. So instead of bringing it back to its former state, I'm going to create something a little different. So as I said, the movement is pretty much broken. The balance staff seems to be broken, and it's also missing several parts from the automatic module. So instead of going with this movement, I figured that I should swap it out with a newer movement. But first, I need to take off the dial. Usually on Seiko movements, they just fit into a plastic spacer ring, but here there are actually screws, which I'm clearly struggling to get out. Yeah, so this is the old movement. It's really cool. I do prefer that the date discs are in metal instead of plastic, which the newer movements have. But yeah, just look at this dial. It's so beautiful. The patina and the loom has developed such a nice color, and also the grainy texture is incredibly nice. So the movement that I'm going to use is the NH36 with the black date discs. It's a newer movement and it has a few more functions, which I really appreciate in a modern watch. It's also completely new, so it's not going to need any service. And of course, before assembling any kind of watch, you should test the functions of it, so you don't have to go back later and disassemble everything. You risk destroying some of the parts if you do that. And with these older dials, the dial feet do not match up with the plastic ring that comes with the NH movements, so I unfortunately have to cut these off. And the way I do this is by just clipping them off with a nail clipper. And just like that, it just snaps off. Great. Now, usually you would need to file down what's staying there, but this time it just snapped off all the way into the dial plate, so we don't need to file anything off. And just to test that everything lines up, which it naturally does. This is what's so great about Seikos. Everything's pretty much compatible, even 50-year-old watches. And to secure the dial, after we have clipped off the dial feet, we just need to secure it with dual-sided tape. And this tape is usually used to secure bezel inserts. This time it will be used for a dial. And then just press it on. The plastic on these spacer rings are so polished, so getting something to stick is a little bit difficult, but it seems to be sticking. Just pressing it down to make sure. My tweezer is also so blunt, so getting under there is a little difficult. And then the last one, just to be sure that the dial fits and sits securely. You don't want to do too much either, because removing the dial can be pretty difficult when there's too much tape, and you definitely do not want to bend or warp the dial. And then just take off the protective film. Now, to install the dial, you need to be very precise, because once it's on the sticky tape, it's really difficult to remove. So I'm just getting really close up there, and yeah, it seems to be pretty aligned. That's perfect. Now I'm just going to let it sit for a couple of minutes, just to make sure that the tension is slowly relieved. And in the meantime, I can show you the case that I want to use. Now, this is the Petrichor case that I designed for Nomods around a year ago. It's inspired by the watches from the 70s with an industrial look and a domed crystal, so I think it will fit really well with the dial and be a perfect substitute to the original case. And removing the bracelet is really easy with these quick release spring bars. So I'm just going to set this aside. I do have a couple of other bracelets laying around, so I'm not going to waste an entirely new bracelet. And yeah, I love this case. I wear it so much. Okay, now to install the insides of the movement, or to install the movement assembly. We need to install the hands first. And to do that, you need to double check that the time of the movement is at midnight, so you can easily align the hands, so the date changes at midnight. So I'm just setting it forth and letting it rest. The hands that I'm going to be using, so for the hands that I want to use, I've chosen the classical 62 mass style. If I'm able to open this bag, I had to take off my finger cuffs just to be able to grip it. And the reason I chose these hands are mainly because of the color of the loom. As you can see, it fits pretty well, but also the brushed textures and the polished bevels fit really well with the case. I love this style of hands. The loom is also super bright. As you can see, it fits incredibly well. So to install it, I just make sure that it's showing 12 o'clock at midnight. And then gently place the hour hand. I'm using brass tweezers for this to avoid scratching the hands. And then just gently match it. Perfect. And installing the hour hand is really simple with these hand tools. And then just to make sure the hands are clean. Often when hands are shipped in a plastic bag, a lot of residue is transferred from the bag to the hands, so it's really handy to just be able to clean it with these camera sensor cleaners. And then the minute hand is on. And to make sure that the date changes at the right time, which it does, that's perfect. You also want the hands to stack on top of each other perfectly so they don't hit each other. Okay, now for the tricky part, the second hand. And this is the part that most people struggle with because the pivot is so thin. But with a little bit of patience, you can easily click it on. And the hand stack pretty consistently. You also don't want the second hands to poke up too much, otherwise it would hit the glass. And this is especially important for the Petrichor case, when glass is stoned. And now to install the case, we need to remove the temporary stem, which can be a bit tricky. I usually just use the teeth, but for this, for the video, I decided not to. And removing dust is always a good idea. And another trick that I learned from a photographer is to blow on the sensor cleaner. And he told me that it has something to do with static electricity and that the cleaner attracts dust when it's blown. I don't know anything about it, but it seems to be working. And easy as that, you just press on the case. This is definitely the most rewarding thing about watch modding. You can now finally see the watch come together. And I think it's turned out incredibly well. The silver details just match so well with the case. Now, before closing up the watch, we need to install the stem. This is also one of the more tricky jobs when it comes to watch modding. But with the right patience, it's relatively easy. So what I do is just screw on the crown to measure it. And then when I have the measurements, I just try to get as close as possible without cutting too much so you don't blow the stem. And to cut it, I just use my nail clipper. And easy as that. The reason I do this is because it leaves off a lot cleaner threads, but it is a bit more riskier because it can snap off more than intended. And this time it seems to be working out just fine. Then for the case back, I just make sure to take off the gasket so we can clean it and oil it. And I do this with these containers that pretty much have grease on them, these sponges. It's a pretty weird tool, but it works. Then just cleaning the back of the glass. And tightening the back. Usually I would use my professional tools, but I'm in the process of moving, so I've packed it down. So instead I'm just using this $1 friction ball, but honestly it works equally as good. And that's pretty much it. The watch is complete. Usually I would pressure test it and time it with the time grapher, but I'm just too excited to start wearing this. And the last thing that remains is to just install the bracelet. And this is also incredibly easy thanks to the quick release spring bars. So I'll just click it in, just like that. And then on the other side. So if you notice the marks on the bracelet, this is actually my old bracelet. I didn't want to use yet another new bracelet, so I'm just using something I had laying around. But yeah, that's pretty much it. The watch is complete and I am super happy. It feels so good knowing that I'm able to restore this project once and for all. It's been sitting for so many years and I've always had a bad feeling about knowing that this had gone to waste, but I think it turned out incredibly well. So thank you for watching. This is the first video I've ever done like this, so if you have any critique or any wishes, please let me know. Thanks, bye.